So we have our new oil pump here for $49.55. It finally showed up, but there are some differences. This new oil pump uses a different suction tube and screen than the old oil pump. This is the old oil pump. Why they ever redesigned this is beyond me, because I like this screen a whole lot better on the old one. It's much bigger than the new one. So I don't know why they had to change something that worked good other than this part that didn't work good. So anyways, what we have to do is we have to take this plate off, which I already started, put two of these gaskets in with this new suction tube. So I'm going to get started and get this done. Okay, so we're putting this together, getting our gaskets put on here, and they only go a certain way. So that gasket's a little funky.
Yeah,
no,
where,
that can't be right.
Yeah, where it bows is where...
Yeah, that ain't right.
No, that is right.
How's that right?
Oh, no, that's right.
That's right.
Okay.
I got it right now.
Guys might have some technical difficulties doing it yourselves.
Yeah, one-person job turned into a two-person job. Thanks, Josh. So actually, if anybody remembers the video from yesterday, when I drove by Josh planting corn and I talked about Josh being the president, well, the president's actually helping me right now.
I'm in a video?
Yeah, you are.
Oh, sweet.
What the hell now? No, this line wants to line up. Am I missing something here? So we finally got the puzzle figured out. Josh and I got it figured out. It's a little confusing at first.
Yeah.
I think it's because we're looking at it sideways.
Yeah, or it was upside down.
But just make sure you have your gaskets in the proper spots. That's all you got to really...
And the spacer going the right way.
And the spacer the right way.
A lot of threads on that bolt, huh?
Yeah, those are long bolts.
Wow. What size wrench you using?
5/8.
Nice. Snap on?
No, gear wrench.
Nice.
Twisted gear wrench. Yeah, if the gear wrench company would like to send me stuff, go ahead. Okay, we'll hit them with torque wrench later. We're snug. So that part's done. So we've got our torque wrench. We've got it set to 30 foot-pounds. Very good. That part's done. Okay, so we got our oil pump bolted all back in with the help of Josh's girlfriend Emily. She helped me figure out which bolts go where, because I kind of mixed them up, but it was pretty simple to figure it out once we put them in and took them back out. So Dad washed everything up and kind of mixed the bolts around, but there's only 4. There's only 2 different lengths of each one, so it wasn't too bad to figure it out. But anyways, we're to the point now where we can put the pan back on and get some oil back in it, get the drive shaft and all that stuff back in it, and by the end of the day we should be able to start it and run it. So we're going to get started on the oil pan now. And I almost forgot, if you do take a rod cap or main cap off, these are stretch bolts, so you will want to replace the bolts, which we did. We put brand new bolts back in there and retorqued them to the right torque spec. So just a reminder, don't reuse the bolts. John Deere does not recommend it. It is a no-no. So if you ever disturb one, put new bolts on it, just to be safe. So we got our pan back on, and I'm going to go ahead right now and tighten the drain plug up and just put oil back in it just to be safe. And before we put the sending unit back in, the new sending unit, we're going to put a manual gauge in it just to check oil pressure, just to make sure that it's got its 50 to 60 pounds of oil pressure. and make sure there's no injury somewhere else. And then, well, before we can start it, we got to put the shifter back in for the front wheel assist and the drive shaft back in it. And then we're pretty much done with this project. Other than checking oil pressure and putting the sending unit back in it that's supposed to be in it, plugging it back in, we're pretty much done. So we're going to get that put back in, drive shaft in now. And before I do that, I'm going to put oil in it though, just to be safe. So we got the shifter put back on for the front wheel assist. So we can take our angle iron off now that held the shaft out, so we didn't mess the seals up on the shaft. And then I got oil put back in it, and we're going to put our cast piece back on the front that holds the front axle. We're going to put that back in, and then we can put the drive shaft back in, and then we can start it and see what it does. So wish us luck. Should run just fine though. So we've got our cast iron cross member brace, frame brace, whatever you want to call it, support for the front axle, all bolted back in. It's pretty heavy. The best way to do it is lay on a creeper, put it on your chest, and bench press it up in there, and have somebody get the bolts started, at least one on one side, because in the front you can actually shove it up on the studs and it'll stay there until you get a bolt or two in the back. And there's blocks up in here that are threaded, and these bolts thread up in these blocks. So before you put it all back together, take an air blower, blow the frame rail all out, and make assembly a lot easier. And anti-seize these bolts, because dirt can lay up in here on the tips of these bolts and rust them, and they won't come out the next time very easy. So anti-seize all this. It'll make life a lot easier if you ever have to tear it apart again. So now we're going to move on to our front drive shaft and the drive shaft shield and get that back together. Dad's putting hydraulic oil back in it. Forgot about the hydraulic oil. That gets all drained out when you drain the clutch housing to take off your shifter for your front wheel assist. So the whole time that this tractor sat in here, it's dribbled oil out of it. So it's probably pretty much, almost empty on oil. So we're going to get the hydraulic oil dumped back in it. And once I get this drive shaft back on, we're done under here. And then we'll start it and check the oil pressure and see what we've got. So I'm going to get that drive shaft in now. And then I'm done under here. And there we go. Everything is completely put back together under the tractor. Drive shaft's back in. Drive shaft shield's on. All the oil's put back in. We're going to change the oil filter real quick, and then we're going to start it. So we're going to pull the fuel stop out and crank the tractor over a few times before we let it start, just to see what happens, if it'll pump oil. She's fine. Claire's talking. That's what's talking in the background. Okay, go for it. I'd say it's probably okay. Okay, so tractor's ready to go back to the field. After a couple tests with a manual gauge, we determined that the oil pressure is fine. Turbo quieted right down. I thought that it was, I thought the bearings were out of it, but they weren't. Bushings, bearings, whatever's in this one. But they weren't. They were perfectly fine. It was just sounded dry because they had no oil, and they will do that once in a while. So we got our electric sending unit put back in where we had our manual gauge plumbed in. So if you ever need to get manual oil pressure out of one of these motors, just thread this out and put your manual gauge in. I put a new sending unit in it just to be safe. So a good kit for checking manual oil pressure is this Carlisle Napa kit. It's 3343 is a part number. I really like this. It's got all kinds of adapters and stuff. So, total cost of repairing this tractor right now, as it sits, was $900. That was just parts. That was gaskets, oil pump, 2 rod bolts, 2 main bolts, because the rods and main bolts are stretch bolts and they have to be replaced after being stretched and taken out. You don't want to put them back in. John Deere recommends that you just put new bolts in after they've already been put back in. Guys that have dealt with stretch bolts understand how that works. So anyways, $900 in parts, and probably another, well, I know probably close to about $650 worth of hydraulic oil and engine oil to put back in it. So I've had a lot of friends ask me, well, why, friends that are non-farming friends that, you know, I've met along the way, they ask me, well, why didn't you just take this tractor to the dealership and have them fix it while you go do something else? Well, the problem with that is I've got the knowledge to fix it. I've got all the necessary tools in this shop to fix them. If I was to take this tractor to a dealership, I'd be around $5,500 to $6,000 by the time I got this tractor back. So with my abilities to be able to fix it, my dad's combined years of experience working on these tractors, dad's strengths, experience, there's nothing we can't fix. So we might as well do it ourselves and save that money. And as tight as the farming economy is right now, we're already planting a crop that we don't know if we're going to make a profit on at the end of the year. Because the economy, the price is just not there. I mean, so we got to keep things as tight as possible to be competitive. So that's why we do all our own work. And there's really nothing on these tractors we can't do. The 8640, I had it in here. We had it split, put a clutch in it, done a bunch of other stuff to it, fixed it. This one, I've done manifold gaskets. I've done intake gaskets on it. I've done a lot of stuff. I've had this whole tractor tore apart before. So, that being said, we've got the ability, we've got the tools, we've made the investment, we've got the books on them, we've got the internet if we need to find stuff for them. So, we might as well do them ourselves. Now, if you were to do the same job on your car, that oil pump would probably be $50 at O'Reilly's, maybe. Just kind of give you a price comparison of how much more expensive this farm equipment is. This episode, give me a like and a subscribe. I greatly appreciate it.